So Zoom drops a major upgrade, and where do we even start? Hello and welcome to 7 features to not miss in Zoom meetings version 6. It's a big upgrade. Hey, my name is Roger Courville, and welcome to another episode of Thought Leader Conversations, sponsored by the crew at Virtual Venues. And that's, of course, who we have here today, just talking about some new stuff. You know, one of the things that we do here is look at your specific use case and match it with just exactly the right tool so that you get to the goal or the outcome that you want. But we're not really here to talk about our business model so much as welcoming to the stage Jess Bradford. Jessica, I am excited that you are here in part because I know there's probably nobody at V2 that spends more time with Zoom than you. Well, maybe me. I don't know. Tell us a little more about yourself since it's your first time on the podcast.
Thanks, Roger, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm stoked to be here. My name is Jessica Bradford, and I am a senior program manager here at V2. I have been in the virtual event space since 2008, if you could believe that. And I've been here at V2 for 13 years, so kind of a long time. And here as our senior program manager, I handle a lot of our big high touch clients. So kind of helping them walk through that virtual event lifecycle from start to finish. Anybody that might need that more kind of white glove touch, they come to me. I also am our team's Zoom SME. So I think that's part of the reason I'm here today. So we can talk about these new updates.
SME, that's good techie language right there. Subject matter expert. Yeah, we spend a lot of time getting into the back stuff. And particular to this conversation, Jess and I spent I don't even know how long we spent digging in, and you've spent time on your own as well. One of the things that I think I've seen with like in my Facebook group is some people going, whoa, where do I even start? Mm-hmm. And so we just thought, you know what, let's pull out some features that strike us for one reason or another and just chat about them. We're not doing any demos. We're not showing things. Obviously, we're not here to sell you Zoom. But if you want to think about a few things that are kind of cool that you might give an eye to, that's what we're here to do. So, Jess, where do you want to start? Pick one.
Well, should we start with just kind of some of the new things you're going to see? I think just in terms of the user experience when you come into Zoom meetings on this new version. I think one thing people are going to notice is that they have changed a lot of the icons and they have moved to different spots. So when you come into the meeting room, you'll notice those icons at the bottom. So like where reactions are, where the chat is, all of those things, those icons have changed slightly. And also now a cool thing with that is you can, where the meeting settings are down there, there's that menu settings, the 3 little dots. You can actually drag and drop the icons that you want to have access to onto your toolbar at the bottom, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty neat. Makes it way more user-friendly for attendees and for hosts and co-hosts. Also, something new that I liked about it too down there was the emoji reactions are way more dynamic now too, really cool. When you go in there and look at that, it's a heart now. And if you click on it, there's a new line of emojis. And if you click on them, they're actually like their thumbs up and the smileys now like go up and float above your head and they're way more dynamic. So that's pretty cool. That's something that you'll definitely notice when you come into the new version. What about you, Roger?
Well, as long as we're talking about user experience, UX, and buttons, I loved the fact that because obviously what we do is a lot of production for clients who have exacting needs and standards. I loved that they moved and created a new button they call what do they call it? The host button.
I think host controls is what it's called.
So if you're the host or co-host or one of the co-hosts, you now see a button that gives you access to all of the things you used to have to go hunting for that you wanted to turn on and off. Like, you want to be able to turn off the entry chime or whatever those were. And you might remember that you used to have to go into, say, the participant list and select the little more button or the chat window and then select the little additional options button. They're all behind one conveniently centered button now. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Even
For
if I
our
remember,
power users like us are really going to appreciate that when you're hosting and co-hosting the meetings for sure.
yeah. One thing I think we figured out that is new, but it might only be on the Mac version so far,
Mm-hmm.
is a feature called Play Chime for raised hands.
Mm-hmm.
And so, since I'm a Mac user, I use both, but my Mac is my primary. When I turned it on, I'm like, oh, my first thought, my first gut reaction was like a little throw up in the back of my mouth. I'm like, oh, chime. I mean, well, right. I'm the guy that's always turning off the entry chime, so you're not hearing a ding dong every time
Right.
comes into or leaves the meeting, right? So I'm thinking chime like that, and it was not that way. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we tested it, what I found was that it was a pleasant and kind of almost in the background, just this really,
Mm-hmm.
really comfortable little chime, almost like something you'd hear on an airplane. Um, but if you like that oral cue, right? You think
Uh-huh.
about those nonverbal or those cues that we are missing when we move from in person to online.
Mm-hmm.
One of the beautiful things about that is you may or may not see somebody's hand up. Kind of depends on how many
Mm-hmm.
people are in the meeting, whether or not you're looking at the participant list, whatever those. So if you like that other little something that says, "Hey, somebody's got their hand up," I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a uh, pretty cool little tool.
I think that's really cool. And I think too, correct me if I'm wrong, if you use the chime, I think only you hear it as the host or co-host,
Oh,
right?
right. That was one of the other things we figured out. Yes, that was
Yeah.
true. That, meaning me turning it on for me,
Mm-hmm.
and Jess was also a host or co-host. She wasn't hearing it. It wasn't turning it on for
Yeah.
everybody. It was just for me you know, it was just for me.
Which is cool because it's not kind of interrupting, you know, the meeting in any way with an additional sound like we were talking about, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think is often underutilized in virtual event platforms,
Mm-hmm.
including Zoom, is the ability for you to customize things to the way you like to do them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a guest because I wrote several books and stuff. I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts, and oftentimes they'd go, "Hey, what's your one tip?" And I would say, open your at a glance tools. And they're like, what are my at a glance tools? And I'm like, well, open up that chat box or that Q&A pane, undock it and stick it right under your nose so that you
Mm-hmm.
see those questions come in. You don't have to go hunting for them. And,
Right.
so to me, being able to customize that little chime,
Mm-hmm.
one of the ways I can customize the experience for me to be able to be more dynamic and interactive, talking in a sense with people instead of at them.
Totally. Yeah. And you would know better than anyone because you do so many trainings with meetings where that's going to be super handy, having folks being able to raise their hand and you'll be able to hear it and really interact with them. Like you said, I think that's going to be a really, really helpful one.
What's another feature that you like?
Um, let's see. So this feature that I want to bring up next, it technically rolled out in 2023, but I think we should mention it just because I don't think a lot of people know about it. So when you create polls now on the account level, so when you're in your Zoom profile in the backend scheduling, now when you go to schedule, or excuse me, yeah, schedule or set up a polling question back there, you can actually turn on the ability to create breakouts based on the results of that poll. So really cool. When Roger and I tested it, we had a couple of polling questions pop up, and then based on how our team responded, it automatically breaks out attendees into those breakout rooms based on the results. It's super cool. So after the poll ends, it actually gives you a little option in the polling window now to go to the breakout window, and then you can open it up, see people are already moved into their groups. You can still move people around if you need to, and then just go ahead and start the breakouts like you would as per usual. I thought that was really cool because now you can split up attendees based on certain criteria, based on a polling question, which I think, Roger, you mentioned, with one of your clients where you do these really long, multi-day trainings, that might be really, really helpful. I know that I have a couple clients that might be helpful for too. So really looking forward to using this one more.
Yeah, I think there are two things that are really are part of how that touches down.
Mm-hmm.
One, you have to think a little bit more like an instructional designer.
Right.
You have to think in advance,
Mm-hmm.
what do I want this experience to be? And obviously, a lot of webinars or events don't do breakout rooms, which to
Mm-hmm.
me is a tragedy. I think it's an opportunity that's often not even thought about. Interestingly, one of the guests that we had on this show, was it a year ago, Lauren Sawyer, talked about
Mm-hmm.
how she did
I know, Lauren.
lead generation marketing using
Uh-huh.
breakouts. And to me, I think, I think it's just a potential that is just
Totally.
untapped, right? And
Totally.
honestly, I'm probably as good an example of any with regard to why we even have this discussion today. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that feature came out last because the
I
clients
know.
that I work with, we were using their platform and they had it switched off, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
just oh no, that didn't just come out. That came out last year. I'm like, what? So you know,
Yeah.
what's crazy is we do this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We do this way more than most any of our clients, right? And still, you get struck. I'll tell you. I'll I'll assume the ball's back in my court. Here's the next feature that I think is
Okay.
cool: portrait lighting for video. I'm going to say that again:
Mm-hmm.
portrait lighting for video. Now, here's a 50,000-foot description. I'll just give you a verbal description. The when you turn that on, think about how Zoom will blur your background, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, this is kind of like that, except that it uses AI to create. It doesn't totally blur out your background. What it does is finds you in the image or in the video, and
Mm-hmm.
brightens you and dims your background. So it does it with a lighting contrast. It doesn't blur it. It's lighting
Mm-hmm.
contrast, which if you know anything about lighting and why, say, photographers do 3-point lighting, part of it is to create this visual separation of the object that you want to have the center of attention, meaning the person, and then whatever the background is, right? That 3-point
Right.
light kind of gives you that separation. This kind of fakes that, and it does it really well. I mean,
It does.
what did you think when we played with that?
I was so shocked at how well it works, and I'm already using it every time I'm in Zoom now because I suffer like many from being backlit in my office. No matter what I'm do, I shut my blinds. Aside from like putting black sheets over my windows behind me.
Right.
I can't get rid of that light. So even with a ring light, which I'm using right now. So I use it. It's awesome. Like you said, it dims your background just enough so that you pop out, stand out, and it makes you look like you have more lighting on on your face, which is really, really cool. And I know, Roger, we were talking about this. It's very similar, like you said, to a virtual background, and then it is a little bit more kind of bandwidth heavy. So I think when people are using it, they'll just kind of want to be aware of that. But I think it's a really cool feature, and I think I'll definitely be showing speakers how to turn that on if it looks like they're having backlit issues like me. And it can be set or turned on in your video settings within the meeting app. So you can go there and enable it.
Yeah. In
Cool.
fact, I think whether you are a professional producer or not, you'd be
Hmm.
somebody's friend by pointing this out to them,
Hmm.
because very, very few people have like killer professional lighting, right?
Hmm.
Very few. They might have a ring light or something to help, but I don't know if assuming you've got the computer horsepower for that, I would
Hmm.
imagine that would help most anybody. And it's really easy to check. I mean, it's really
Totally.
easy to test, as Jessica said. Just go to your video settings and flip a switch, and it's easy to flip it on and off and see what the difference would be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely one of my favorite ones. So I can talk about the next one here.
Yeah.
So I think one of the bigger kind of rollouts for meetings within this version is the rollout of a new video layout called multi-speaker video. So it's basically, I think they're trying to help create a more dynamic, engaging experience with this layout. Basically, it adapts to whoever's currently speaking and highlights and enlarges their video tiles. And so if there, you have, I think it would be really helpful in a scenario where you have, definitely you need to have more than two speakers for this to work. But basically, if you have a panel discussion of people on video, maybe like, 5 to 7 speakers or something like that, it highlights the people that are speaking the most kind of on the top, and then everybody else is in smaller tiles below. So it's kind of similar to gallery view, but a little bit more dynamic in highlighting a little bit more large the folks that are speaking. The other thing that's really cool about this layout is even when somebody is sharing, the layout is preserved when you're in side by side mode. So when you're viewing somebody's screen, that multi-speaker video layout, you'll still see, those two bigger tiles on the top for the two main speakers and then the littler tiles below, which I thought was pretty neat. Um, Still a feature that is user, I would say end user based,
Right.
meaning that attendees can decide whether they want to be in multi-speaker, if they want to be in single speaker or gallery. So they still have the option to choose which view they want. I think of it kind of like pinning a video. So they have that ability there.
Right.
Roger, was there anything you wanted to add about
Yeah.
multi-speaker
No, I think that's a
video?
that's a useful thing to point out. It's an end
Mm-hmm.
user driven tool,
Mm-hmm.
and um,
Seems to be a theme on this update.
yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I mean, obviously, you and I, when we're producing for someone, we're
Mm-hmm.
often charged with or given the task of helping to control what
Mm-hmm.
or how someone is seeing what they're seeing. So, um, you know, just be aware at the moment it's just an end user feature, and
Mm-hmm.
not something that you as the producer, host, or co-host can affect for somebody else at the moment. Um,
Great call out for
like
sure.
like you can when you spotlight.
Right.
But if you think about it, you know, I would imagine sooner or later they'll give you some version of that, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
being able to create a layout and say you know, follow host order, or I forget what. Anyway, just like,
Yeah,
and by the way, just here's your factoid, just in case you didn't know, spotlighting can go up to 9 people.
that's a good reminder. Yes.
So I would imagine, yeah, sooner or later they'll they'll update that. I would imagine. Next one, app. We'll both talk about this one. App color themes, and in a sense, a visual overhaul. So
Mm-hmm.
um, this is different than what we were talking about before. We were talking about some new layout icons. You may find that um, some things are in different places now. When we were talking about user experience that we kicked off the show with, like for instance, one of my favorite things is in the upper right instead of the upper left part of the.
Mm-hmm.
But this is talking about colors. Jess, what did you discover?
Absolutely. Well, sorry about that. My phone's ringing in the background.
Oh, good.
Well, I discovered that so another end user feature. So again, this update is very focused on attendees being able to kind of really customize their experience, which is pretty cool. So if you come into Zoom now, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner where your video layouts are, if you go to View, you can actually scroll down now and select a different color theme. I think there's 3 presets you can choose from. So there's the standard black, which you're used to, which is just the black background that you see behind, the video tiles in Zoom. So I think there's 3 other different colors that you can choose. You can kind of customize your view. And when you do that, it also updates the color of your Zoom app in your toolbar. So if you're using, the desktop app, it will actually change the color of that as well. So that's pretty neat. Um, so that's the theme, and again, that's kind of the attendees can change that based on their connection. The other thing that they did update for meetings is they did add the ability to now have a customized wallpaper. So they added this for webinars. I think a few updates past.
Right.
I want to say it's like a couple ago. Um, and so they finally added it for meetings as well. So as the host or the co-host, you can go into your Zoom account, and in your account, you can actually, there's a bunch of presets you can choose from now that Zoom created. A lot of them are pretty cool, like different colors, some cool different kind of images, things like that, that you can just decide if you want to use that. Or you can upload a custom one. So if you want something that's got your logo or some of your branding colors that you want to include, now you have that ability to have that customization. I think that was something that a lot of people were wanting, because I feel like Zoom does lack that a little bit in its brandability.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the ability to brand some registration pages and the emails a little bit, but in terms of within the console itself, it really didn't have any ability for brandability. So I think this is going to be one that gets used quite a bit for folks. And I know in addition to this, they also did make the change where you can actually customize your name tag too. So you can actually change the color of your name tag. You can even update images for that too. So that's also something that I think people are really going to be using more to kind of really get that branding and customization in their meetings more, for sure.
Yeah, there's a number of things, and I know we're talking the meetings app today,
Mm-hmm.
but there are a number of things that show me that tell me anyway, they have been listening to the marketplace with regard to what the
Totally.
market wants. For instance, if you look at how they've been updating how they price, package, and position
Mm-hmm.
stuff on the events side. Right now, they have Zoom
Yeah.
webinars, Zoom sessions, and Zoom events, which have differing
Mm-hmm.
levels of customizability and brandability and that kind of stuff. And it sounds like, to me, they're taking some cues from On24 and some of those
Yes.
are really highly configurable platforms out there. But last thought on the desktop app color thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did we figure out if you create a custom wallpaper, does that override somebody else, the end user, changing their app color
Yes.
to pink or whatever?
Yes. Great question. Absolutely. So if you decide you want to add a wallpaper, that will override the theme option. So then attendees will have to view the wallpaper. So that's a really good call out, Roger. You can force them into seeing that branding color images that you've added.
All right. I know we've talked about way more than 7 different features here, but I'm going to throw this one out because to me, I think this is kind of cool. My own background being including some audio engineering eons ago. This one's called Improved Voice Print
Mm-hmm.
for Personalized Audio Isolation. Now,
This is cool.
WebEx has some version of, voice isolation, et cetera, but this is another AI driven tool. And here's basically what it does. It's kind of like noise cancellation on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
But Zoom has added this ability for you to train your account on your voice, right? So now can zoom in on, dial in on your voice print,
Mm-hmm.
and that will help it be more effective and more efficient, use less processor power, et cetera, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
bringing out background noises or distinguishing my voice from Jessica's voice, in terms of those, what's the word I'm looking for? In terms of being able to do an oral version of the thing
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about in video, where it highlights your face and dims the background. That's
Mm-hmm.
going on with AI and background noise reduction, screening out ringing telephones or
Yes, I wish I was using it right now for my my phone that was ringing.
yeah,
But that's how you know we're live, right? So it's all good.
totally. Well, and you know what? we're kind of a casual, keeping it real kind of crew, right? You
Totally.
know, so but here's one thing that is useful to remember about this particular feature. You have to train your account. That
Mhm.
means that it's not going to be something that's going to just work wherever you show up. Like, for instance, I've got
Mhm.
one client and they've got like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different Zoom accounts that are on,
Mhm.
that are essentially like personal accounts. They're not all, it's not 5 users on one domain. And that,
Mhm.
you'd have to go train 5 different accounts for it,
Right.
for them. It would be the point. So it may or may not be something that works for you, but in terms of just having recording quality that pops, I think
Mhm.
that's really useful. Particularly
Yeah.
because I believe audio is the most important part,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
If you have audio without video, you can still have a meeting. If you have video without
Yes.
audio, you can nod and
Yes, I actually had that experience the other day where somebody's video cut out, but we could still hear them and everything went fine, you know? I mean, you could still get through what you needed to get through for sure. So, um, I think for folks that are power users like you that, you know, really value high quality audio, I think that this will be a big one for folks like that that are gonna really dig into the audio quality and those presets and making that sound really rich. I think this will be kind of a cool one. But
well,
again, as you mentioned too, it's profile on your specific profile or Zoom account that
yeah,
you'll
as I
want to
recall, I
configure.
didn't do my account, but as I recall, you have to give it permission because you're actually letting it
Mhm.
train your voice. There's a
Yeah.
privacy question or concern there, just kind of like you have to, give your computer permission to use your thumbprint or your facial recognition or something like that. But
Mhm.
here's one place it will really help. Um, there are people who insist on using area-based microphones, meaning they just
Mhm.
use the microphone that's on their computer as opposed to some external microphone that helps better isolate the sound. Or it'll also be really useful in the context of, like, say, a room, right? If you're in a
Mhm.
hybrid environment, whoever's in a Zoom room or in a
Definitely.
conference room with a
With a lot of background noise. Mhm.
that'll be huge. So,
Totally.
all right. Well, I know we've chatted through a bunch of things. Any other thoughts? Any other features you want to throw out there before we call her a day?
I think there's just one more. This one's not really a fun one. It's just I think people should know about it though, is that they are not going to be supporting Windows 7 or 8 on this latest release. So, if you are running Windows 7 or 8, I would be aware of that before you update to this latest release. Um, Not sure if very many folks are on Windows 7 or 8 these days. There could be a few. But I think that's a good one just to know about for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you again to Jessica Bradford and sharing her deep, and I mean deep, level of knowledge. If you don't know Jess, you need to get to know her because she is a fount of knowledge. So, and we're going to have you back to talk about Simulive, because one of the things that Jess does a lot is work with clients who do want to use pre-recorded video and simulated live kind of contexts. And so she's a whiz at that. So we'll have her back on the show to talk about that. In the meantime, we thank you for catching this particular episode of Thought Leader Conversations, and we will see you next time around.